2 p.m. I'd like a roll call of the board members, starting with Clark Brewer. Please say your name and say you're here.
Clark Brewer, here.
Tom Callahan here.
Eric Potter here.
Amy Glassmeyer here. Mr. Grady.
Paul Grady here.
Thank you very much.
I said here.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Sorry. I must be getting deaf.
No, I said
Becoming
Paul
deaf.
Grady here.
All right, let me first start out by asking the public if there is anything that someone would like to place on the agenda.
Is there a public?
There are a few people here.
Wow.
All right,
public?
I don't see anybody coming forth, so I'm going to ask Lauren to please explain to everyone how the public participates.
Certainly, thank you. So for any members of the public, if you wish to speak to the board at any time, we ask that you use the Q&A function down at the bottom and you would input your name and your address. You can input questions to leave with the board in that section, but that's the way that you should direct your attention. And I'll also note that if there is something that a public hearing you're wishing to speak on at the end of that section of the public hearing, we will take public comment. So if you have any other comments other than things on the agenda, now would be your time to alert the board. Thank you.
By not seeing anyone raise their hand, I'm going to move on. I'd like to make two introductory comments. The first is that the agenda was changed and the A&Rs have been postponed. The second is I wish to ask the board members to allow me to amend the agenda to move the discussion of the HVBOD 124-87 Elm Street final draft decision language confirmation, number one. And then number two, after that, I'm going to ask you if after we discuss the HVBOD SPA, I'm then going to ask you if everyone agrees with the language, then I'm going to ask you to allow me to make a second motion to proceed to enable the chair to sign on behalf of the planning board the final documents. So let's begin. May I ask, I'm asking for a motion to change the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor, please roll call. Clark Brewer.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Eric Potter, aye.
Paul Caleri.
Paul Caleri, aye.
Thank you. Paul Grady.
Paul Grady, aye.
Thank you. Amy Glassmeyer, aye. So the first order of business then will be to have a discussion of the document that we have as a final draft decision. And I'm asking for discussion and if so, approved language confirmation so we can proceed. So the floor is open.
I have no comments.
Yeah, looks good. Ready to go.
No comments here.
All right, then without any comments, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the HVBOD SPA 124-87 Elm Street final draft decision language. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Do you want to amend that motion to include allowing you to sign the decision?
I'm just going to move right through my plan. So if you wouldn't mind just doing this one, then I'll do the next one. I'd appreciate it. So can I get a motion to approve?
A motion to approve.
Okay, roll call approval.
Was there a second? Sorry.
I'll
Thank you,
second
Clark,
it.
for the second. Okay, Eric, Clark Brewer,
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Eric Potter, aye.
Paul, who's next? Paul Grady, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye. The motion passes. The next item is I would like a second motion to from the board to approve the chair's signature on behalf of the board to complete the document. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion. Second.
Thank you. Roll call, Clark Brewer,
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Paul Grady, aye.
Eric Potter, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye. All right, thank you. So we're done with the first item of business. The next item of business that we'll be moving into is the public hearing, and we're a little bit early for the public hearing. So I'd like to ask the board members if we can deal with administrative matters in terms of approval of minutes while we have about 8 minutes to go. Can I get a motion to proceed?
Motion to proceed.
Can I get a
Second.
All right. May I get a roll call, please?
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Paul Grady, aye.
Eric Potter, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye. All right, let's move on to approval of minutes.
I said January 13th, 2021.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Paul Grady, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye. Paul Cleary, go ahead. All right, so we have about 6 minutes where we need to wait before.
Lauren has a
Actually,
question.
We actually have, oh, you're right, actually, sorry. So we can proceed. No, we still have, oh, no, sorry.
Lauren
yes.
has a question.
No, no,
Lauren has a
you're right,
question.
you're right.
Lauren has a question.
Go ahead, Lauren.
The first public hearing for the large house review was actually advertised for 6:30, so we can begin.
Okay,
Good.
all right.
Thank you, Lauren.
That's not a question.
So
I
let's
said thank you.
open the hearing for, can I ask Paul Grady to read the documentation for the 4 Windy Hill Road?
Notice of public hearing, Cohasset Planning Board pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A and 305-4 and the Cohasset zoning bylaws. The planning board will hold a virtual public hearing on the Zoom platform, webinar ID 1825-3048, password 545480 on Wednesday, February 10th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. for a large house plan review for property being shown on Cohasset Assessor's Map 09-50 4 Windy Hill Road, Cohasset, Mass. 02025. The application is for the construction of a new RGFA 4,970 square foot single-family residence. The application is submitted by Eames Capital Partners, LLC. A copy of the application and plans and accompanying documents are on file in the town clerk's office at Cohasset Town Hall, 41 Highland Avenue, with office hours of Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Tuesday, 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Electronic copies of said application can be obtained by contacting Planning Director Lauren Lind via email at lllind@cohassetmass.org, cohassetma.org. Any person interested wishing to be heard on the application should access the virtual meeting at the time designated. Signed, Amy Glassmeyer, Chair, Planning Board.
Thank you, Paul. With that, the public hearing is open, and I ask the planning board members to comment. Let's try to do it in an orderly fashion. Clark Brewer,
Does it make sense to have the applicant
make a
make some kind of a presentation? It doesn't have to be lengthy, to point out the salient aspects and any clarifications of
Yes.
what's being proposed?
Thank you very much. That's
Yeah.
correct. Can the applicant identify themselves and also indicate who will be speaking to us?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Andrew Groman. I'm with the development team, Eames Capital Partners, and we're working on the call here with John Teriyaki. He'll be presenting both of the projects. We also have with us Jeff Hassett with Morris Engineering to cover the civil engineering aspects or any questions you may have for that. So with that, I'll turn over to John to go ahead and just give a brief overview of I assume we're starting with lot 31 for now. So yeah, go ahead.
We actually have them in the opposite order of that. Is there a problem for you to deal with 4 Windy Road first?
Well,
Road?
4 Windy Hill is lot 31.
Okay.
I see. Thanks.
And then lot 32 would be 630 Jerusalem Road. Yeah.
All right. Mr. Teriyaki?
Hi, good evening. John Teriyaki, Teriyaki Architectural Design. If you don't mind, I will share my screen to just give you a brief overview of the site. So this is Windy Hill Road, Jerusalem Road intersection, and the 2 lots are essentially adjacent to each other in this general area. This right here is the most recent Windy Hill house that was constructed by the same development team. I just want to give you a general sense of the context. I will then share my screen again to go into the site plan and some other details. Here's the site again. This was a comparative study that we put together to compare some lots and houses in the area, lot sizes and overall square footages, just to give the board a general context of comparably sized developments in the area. But I will go ahead and open the site plan for 4 Windy Hill Road. So once again, Windy Hill Road at the bottom of the screen, Jerusalem Road to the right of the screen, and the proposed footprint of the house. Maybe we can start with, and again, I'll just give a very brief overview because I'm sure you have questions and I don't want to take too much of your time, but just give you a very basic site overview and I'll go through the architecture of the house as well. But as a general site layout, the general layout is that the main house faces slightly diagonally towards the intersection of Jerusalem and Windy Hill Road, and then it's broken up into multiple wings so that it doesn't appear as a monolithic structure. The overall square footage is 4,970 square feet over 2 floors plus an attic level that's half finished. The general layout of the site is such that the garage has a double wide driveway connecting Windy Hill Road perpendicularly to minimize the amount of overall impervious asphalt driveway and create a simple intersection. And from then on, the house has a front porch facing the street and then a more private patio in the back. The house has gone through, I believe, a stormwater review previously, and Jeff Hassett can touch more on that if we have any questions on that. But the intent is to include a stormwater system, infiltration system on site that would catch any drainage from the new impervious areas created. I'm just going to go into the architectural drawings. First floor plan, as I mentioned, the garage with the driveway coming off of Windy Hill, the mudroom connection, main living area of the house. The center of the house, this rectangle right here, is the tallest part, and then off of that center tallest piece, the 2 wings step down. So that was our general design approach. Again, second floor of the house is the bedroom level, and then the attic level having dormers and having a bonus room with an unfinished utility and storage area as well. Since the house is at multiple angles, we use architectural section cut lines, which is what these symbols are for, just to draw every facade projected or orthogonally. So the main center of the house, as I mentioned, with the covered porch, is a 2-story structure, taking cues from the colonial language that exists on the street. Most of the houses on Windy Hill have a similar 2-story plus an attached garage, a massing, albeit a little smaller and slightly shorter. But the house has a wing on the right side that steps down, and as I mentioned, on the left side, the mudroom and the garage wing also steps down. So these 2 wings are under roof and dormers, whereas the center wing has 2 full height stories plus the attic above it. These are some additional views of the house. The back side facing the patio, the back side of the garage.
John,
Yeah.
which is the elevation that is closest to Jerusalem Road, or what's the corner? Is that the one we're looking at on the top?
This right here actually would be the closest. If I just switch back to the site plan.
And then the side is the one above it?
Oops, sorry. Right, so this facade right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually both of these. So the front and the right side would be visible from Jerusalem Road. Let me switch back to the set here. So this would be visible diagonally from Jerusalem Road, this facade right here, and then the main 2-story portion of the house.
Sure.
That faces diagonally. And in terms of other aspects, we provided some lighting cut sheets, and the lighting fixtures are located on the plans and elevations. Very straightforward scheme, basically just sconce lights, different models of sconce lights around the garage and the entries, and facing the backyard. And I believe in the porch, we showed some recessed exterior fixtures, 3 of those here. But again, fairly simple and straightforward. We also have a previously developed planting plan. I apologize, I'm switching different sheets. Just pull that up. We provided this in the application. This was developed by another team for another house design on the same lot, but there were some landscape strategies that were maintained, mainly the buffer plantings adjacent to the upper lot on lot 32, the short retaining wall here, about a 3.5 foot retaining wall to be able to create the patio, and then some mitigation plantings and bushes proposed along Jerusalem Road. So,
John, excuse me,
Yeah.
just a quick question. I noticed that the porch plan changed from your drawings from this initial stormwater plan. But are you saying, just for clarification, that you're doing the plantings shown in the stormwater plan, but your footprint has changed slightly in accordance with the Morse plan?
that's correct. The footprint changed, but the planting strategy would remain the same.
Okay, so the plantings that you're showing here are what you're proposing for this project?
Yes, that's the current understanding, and I know the layouts are different, so the quantities may vary.
Right.
And if the board would like more information on that, we can certainly combine the plans together and provide an updated planting plan based on the most up-to-date footprint as well.
No, I say the planting plan that you just showed us looks pretty good. it looks like it's pretty well thought out. I mean, there are some, I guess there might be some questions about what size things are, but I think that those were shown pretty clearly on the schedule.
Right, yeah. So I won't talk about the other house yet. Or we can, and we can talk. I don't know if it's too much to talk about them together or just do one at a time.
No, one at a time. We have to review and then once we're done with this one, then we'll open a public hearing for the next one.
Okay. Would you like to keep my screen shared, or should I stop share and?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
What's the square footage of the footprint?
The entire footprint on the property?
Of the house?
The house square footage is 4,970 total. And I can give you a square footage of just the footprint you see here, if that's what you meant.
Yes, what is that footprint?
Yes, if you don't mind, I'm just going to measure it on my drawing and give it to you. Just a second, please.
Hey, John, Jeff Hassett here with Morse Engineering.
The first floor is just over 2,000.
Wait a minute, we've got 3 people speaking. At this point, who would like to speak first? Mr. Hassett, would you like to speak first?
Yeah, thank you. Jeff Hassett here with Morse Engineering. I do have that area requested. The footprint of the house, including the porch and the garage, so the roof area, is 3,156 square feet.
All right, thank you. Clark Brewer, you had something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think along Tom's lines, I was wondering what the lot coverage, building coverage are. I didn't see it in the Morse plan. Maybe you could point it out.
Jeff, I'm not sure if you have those numbers.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
If you want to come back to me in a moment, I'll give you those percentages.
Okay. Those should be on your permit plan anyway.
Sure. Yeah, I'll make sure in the future they are.
I'd like to ask a question, which is, what's the relationship between the structure and the lot lines? It looks to me like it's extremely tight, and that this is kind of worked into the site in a very tight way. There's not much wiggle room. It leaves you with the impression that there's very little side yard, very little room for maneuver.
Well, you see the building envelope is shown, and in this case, it's a required 30-foot front yard setback to both Windy Hill Road and Jerusalem Road. And that does comply. It's at 36.6 and 30.5. And then adjacent to the garage, that would be a side yard setback with it being required 20, and we're providing 21. And to the rear setback, that would be a 30-foot required. And the garage is, well, the main house is at 33.3 and the garage at 30.5. So it does comply to the zoning setbacks.
What about adjacent properties? Are most of the houses on this side of Jerusalem Road about 30 feet from the property line, or are they set back quite a bit further?
Well, as you head west, that's a pretty steep slope, and for that reason, the houses are set back up on the hill. As you head towards the water, I know the first house on Windy Hill is set back because it more is angled towards Windy Hill Road. There we go. Yeah.
Tom Callahan?
And Clark, are you done for the moment?
Well, I wanted to point out that even though this is right up against the at the minimum of front setback, the 45 or almost 45 degree angle to that property line does make a difference in terms of how you perceive the kind of mass of the house. If you're looking at the corner straight on, really the front of the house sort of extends across the Windy Hill Jerusalem Road intersection. It kind of gives you more distance, visual distance, and I think that's that overall is a benefit. But based on the stormwater, it looks like the building coverage was 0.2% under the maximum. So if you could figure that out, that would be great. Whatever the new building and lot coverage is.
Yeah, I have those numbers right here now. The building coverage is 16%. The max allowed is 20.
Yep.
And the impervious coverage is 20%, max allowed 30.
Okay, so you've reduced it.
Whoa, can we back
And
up
actually-
on that?
Yeah.
Back up, I want to make sure we're talking about the right thing. You say impervious, what are you including in your definition of impervious?
The roof and the driveway.
And anything else?
Video?
That's all they included for the 20%. I can give you the numbers, including, say, the walkway and the patio in the back.
What about the porch?
Clark, do you have a comment?
No, I think we're talking about the same things. He's under by a couple of percentage points, so I think that's enough. It's certainly significantly less building coverage than what was shown on the stormwater plans.
Are we looking at different plans than the stormwater plans?
Stormwater plan, the building footprint changed.
Well, I mean, this has been a pet peeve of mine for 30 years. Why aren't we all boards looking at the same set of plans?
I guess there were different owners when that got approved.
Well, then maybe that one has to be reapproved now because the building has changed. You just
Yeah,
can't.
I don't know.
I mean, you can't keep changing plans on the fly depending on which board you're in front of. We're all supposed to see the same thing.
This one got approved back in 2017.
It was reapproved recently.
It got extended? Or?
It was reapproved by Jeff Hassett.
Yeah, that's correct. The plan you're looking at right now was approved by the conservation agent, Jeff Summers, as a modification to the previously approved plan.
Just by Jeff or by the whole board?
Jeff Summers can make an administrative approval for a modification. In this case, it was less impervious area and kind of the same stormwater system. So that's why he was able to.
Were there issues that were brought up by the Conservation Commission during that discussion?
They didn't see it.
Mr. Hassett?
It was administratively approved by the conservation agent as a modification.
All right, I'd like to ask a question
comments
about the
about that.
context study that's required. So you flew over and made a generalization about this structure situated as it is relative to its neighbors. But the requirement of the large house review is that you provide a narrative of the project explaining in details the plans for the property. Did we receive that? Including comparative pictures and comparisons in terms of mass?
We provided a narrative which addressed the different components of the review in writing. I'm not sure if you've received it or not. And
I don't personally have it. I don't believe any of the board members have it.
okay, those were
Yeah, I can
submitted for
confirm that
both.
was dropped off at, it was at either Lauren or Jen confirmed receipt of that.
Madam Chair, I can speak to that.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yes, when we received the application for both Lot 31, which is for Windy Hill, and Lot 32, which is the next public hearing we have, I did ask of the applicant additional information that would address the narrative, the comparative study, which you see before you right now, and the lighting fixtures. The other elements of their application had been included in their initial submission. And so I know it's hard to keep track of all the emails, but if anybody would like on the active planning board application website, it's updated with all of the information in one place on the town website.
Yeah, I think that this is an instance where it is difficult to keep up with all the information. And I personally would like to have an opportunity to review that relative to the context. I think it's really important. While there are some aspects of the structure that seem quite accommodating of the site, on the other hand, that is a very exposed site. And as the structure is positioned on the property, it is going to loom over the road. It's going to be a significant piece of architecture. And I would like to see how it is going to blend with the rest of the residences in the general area.
Amy, are you suggesting that we continue the hearing and make some kind of additional comments based on the missing information?
That's correct.
Okay.
This view that we're looking at right now is very good because it's showing the whole area. And under 5.4 C1A, you know, we're supposed to consider the scale of buildings to the others in the neighborhood. And these two are substantially larger. Substantially larger. The problem with the bylaws, all we can do is approve or approve with conditions. But you know, my other general comment is that these two lots are Exhibit A and Exhibit B of why we should have passed the land alteration bylaw 4 years ago, and why we need to pass it this time. These lots are being stripped. These lots are being completely re-engineered, and you know, it's just a horror show to me. But there's nothing I can do about it being a horror show. So I don't know if any information, you know, additional information is going to help us or give us anything to do, because the bylaw constrains what we are allowed to do.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, Tom, but I still would like to have the information.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
And I would also like to have the building inspector weigh in on the actual house on the site and the extent to which it is a very tight situation on the piece of property that it's going to sit. So in this particular case, for this particular house, I'd like to have further documentation of how it fits within. And again, what we expect are comparative pictures and mass analysis of the surrounding structures, like we saw for 580.
Could you elaborate on the mass analysis in terms of what kind of drawings or documentation you would prefer for that study?
What I would personally prefer is some type of photographic evidence of the relationship between the size that this structure is proposed to be, which you can't simulate, and the structures around it. Because if you look at, for example, across from the pond, you can tell by the design that the house is going to be very significant as it relates to Jerusalem Road and the structures around it. So typically a really good way to be able to see this is to see the comparisons of the structures that surround it. So for example, the house that's across the street, this house is going to be significantly larger than the house across the street, and even significantly larger than a number of the houses on the street as a whole.
Well, this planometric view is to scale, and we provided detailed information from the assessor's office to address the size aspect of this comparative study. There, for example, 39 Windy Hill Road is 5,372 square feet. 34 Windy Hill, almost 3,400 square feet. 45 Windy Hill, 4,200 square feet. There are large homes on Windy Hill, and there are some very large condominium projects.
There is one large
surrounding this.
condominium project that's on there that's right across the street. And if you look at it from the other side of the pond, you can see that it doesn't fit into the context.
There are actually
I almost-
multiple condominium projects. I apologize. 646 Jerusalem Road has 9 units. 660 Jerusalem Road has 7 units. 589 Jerusalem Road has 3 units. In addition to, I believe there are some other ones around. Just to compare in terms of 30 Diab Lane, 10 units. These are some of the existing large structures in the area. That was the whole point of this particular study. What it doesn't show you is photographs, but I don't think photographs really speak the size, because it's hard to compare the photograph of a building from a street and make a size analysis. I think that would probably speak more to style or architectural design. And we can certainly provide that as an attachment to this study.
I don't think comparison to multi-unit buildings is a
appropriate.
fair comparison.
No, not at all.
These two buildings are out of scale for the rest of the neighborhood.
Well, but aren't those buildings
clearly
part of the
they are.
neighborhood?
Well, you know, they're much larger than the majority of the houses surrounding them. So whatever, my point is we can't do much about it, but what's the height of these two buildings, or this building? I can't ask about the other one.
This building, from average grade to the middle of the roof, the main roof is about 28.5 feet. Let me just switch back to the elevation drawings.
And how
To
did
the
you come up
midpoint
with
of the
that?
main roof is about 28.5 feet. To the midpoint of the highest roof structure, which is the shed dormer, is about 31.5 feet.
And where's the bottom? How did you measure average grade?
Average grade is basically the average of the front and the rear grades in this case. And we can provide a more exact overlay as part of the next round of this drawing.
I'm not sure how much you're aware. We've been talking in town about the definition of height and the experience we had with 580 Jerusalem. And I don't know that average grade works for me, but because in the front of the house, it's going to be much larger than 35 feet. In the back, it's going to be shorter. And you're using the average. So.
I mean, we can.
The visual effect from the front of the house is going to be a house that's much taller than 35 feet.
That's not correct. It won't be. I mean, even from the front grade, it won't be more than 35. So this is not a situation where we're using the average to get away from. Even from the front grade, it's still under 35 feet from actually probably even to the peak. I can just confirm that. But
I think because of the topography, the sense of the mass is going to be more substantial. And the proximity of the structure to the street on both sides is going to bring it very close to anybody passing by it.
But the topography is such that this is the low point of Windy Hill. The entire street slopes down.
Yeah, I understand that.
This is
So
the
you're
lowest
going to be
spot.
looking up like this.
From Jerusalem Road, you mean?
Yes.
You can see the contours here, 12 contour, 10 contour. I mean, it does rise up, but it is not as high as the rest of the street on Windy Hill. But that is the reality of the site. It does rise up from the corner of Jerusalem and Windy Hill.
Are there other comments from the board?
No comments. Why don't we continue the hearing and so we can get that additional information and then do a complete evaluation.
I would agree to that, but I would also ask that we make sure that we have all of the exact pieces of the plan process for the applicant as well as for ourselves, in the sense that since we have a former project and the present project, and we're kind of going between the two, even if it's not intended, because we have multiple documents from different experiences, it makes it difficult to understand. Paul Grady?
I mean, I'd like to see if it's a project that was approved in 2017, or I think it was 2017, forgive me if I'm wrong, and then it's brought up to Jeff Summers because they made some administrative changes. I mean, I'd like to see Concom get back involved as well, to see what they feel about it. If they've changed any of the footprint, I think that they should be making the decision, you know, administrative or not, because we're going on two sets of plans if this is being presented the way I think it's being presented.
All right, so we have
So
a
I'd like to see them-
Go ahead, Paul.
No, that's about it. I'd like to see Concom have a sign off on as well. It's a 2-year-old project, 3 is going on
Okay, I'd like to ask a question
4
about
now, 3.
the original landscape. What was the thinking behind the removal of all the mature trees?
I mean, that was done by previous owner, so we don't know what his.
That's been done in the last month. Did the ownership change that recently?
Which ones are you talking about? Sorry.
The entire edge, except for maybe 20 feet, 25 feet of the Jerusalem access, had large trees on it. So then one day driving by, they were cut down. And I just was wondering what the thinking was about doing that, and whether there was any forethought about why.
Yeah, and we cleared trees inside of the that were scheduled to be cleared with Jeff Summers. He came out and staked out the site, marking the trees that would be, a portion of them would be inside of the foundation, and the other portion would be in the trenches outside of the foundation, so they'd have to come down. We didn't remove anything that we didn't have to.
I see. So what you're saying is that the foundation was close enough to the road and also to the trees that they had to be removed. Is that correct?
No, I mean, the foundation is as shown on the site plan from Morse. The trees we removed, it's tough to see on this, but the trees we removed were outside of the proposed tree line. So we didn't remove anything that we should not have removed.
I'm not disputing whether or not they were right or wrong. I'm just curious why the property was stripped of vegetation.
Oh, well, that portion will be landscaped. So anything that's removed is either for the construction of the house or for the future landscaping plans for the house.
Right, but the size of the trees that were there are going to be very difficult to replace in terms of the role that they played in the visual scape of that piece of property, right? I mean, they were really big. They weren't small trees. The stumps are still there.
And we were just told they were removed by the previous owner, so some time ago. I'm a little confused as to this timeline here.
No, so the previous owner didn't remove the recent. We purchased the land from the previous owner well over a month ago, and before, when he originally owned it, he had cut down a lot of trees on the site all the way through from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill. I guess he had cut down a lot of trees. When we took over the property, we had met with Jeff Summers to figure out which trees we could take down. He came out to the site. He met with us and then came back, took the site plan, revised the stormwater plan, came back to the site and flagged the area of the trees to be removed.
So Concom had already approved.
Yeah, so they had approved it.
Prior to the trees removal. That's what I'm taking away from this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, conservation had approved it at that point.
That's where I'm a little puzzled right there. So
yeah.
Summers comes out.
Yeah, and if I could go back to that, the plan that was approved under the stormwater permit by the Conservation Commission, we tried to mimic that. Is as much as we could, and it's almost identical. Granted, it's a different house footprint. The driveway is in the same location, but slightly smaller. The impervious is reduced, and the drainage is identical, and the grading is just about identical as well. The limit of work being identical also. So because of that, it is very common for Jeff Summers to approve that scenario administratively. If this was a plan that came back and it was greater impervious, or we had to change the schematic of the stormwater design, then he would refer it back to the commission. And I'm pretty sure that when he does approve these administratively, he does speak to the chairperson prior to that. But I can get some more information on that.
I'd be
prior to this meeting.
comfortable hearing from the chair of Concom.
Sure.
Okay, that's great. So Clark, would you reestablish your comment to move on to the next project and request that we have consolidated information so that we're all looking at the same plans and we can be most properly informed and useful to the applicant?
Well, I guess we need to know from Jen and Lauren when we can reschedule this for, or continue this to.
So
Jen, Maura?
So I just wanted to comment on, make sure that with the plans that we get the zoning information. I do think that's helpful to have the zoning grid on a site plan so we know where so everything's right in front of us, and we had mentioned that before. Also, there was a letter in the packet from Jeff Summers regarding this administrative review, so we want to make sure that the board sees that and what other information. The landscape plan, what John offered, to possibly make it accurate with the correct footprint would be good for the record. And also that there is the retaining walls have a specific height requirement per the zoning bylaw. So that should be checked as well, because it sounded like it was higher. That's all. Those are my comments.
All right, so what we'll do is we'll assemble the comments and we'll work with you to make sure that we have the list that will satisfy everybody. And then when can we see this case again?
So the next available slot on our agenda would be at 7:45 p.m. on February 24th.
All right.
So motion to continue the large home review with augmented filing information distributed to the planning board members at as indicated by Lauren.
Second,
Let's get a voice vote. Clark
I
Brewer?
second that.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan?
I almost want to vote no because I don't think anything we get is going to change this, but I'll vote aye.
All right, thank you. Paul Grady,
I'll vote aye to reschedule.
Eric Potter,
Eric Potter, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye. Thank you. So let's move on now. Because we have an address, 630 Jerusalem Road, but we also have a lot number 32, which is related to the previous case. And we also have a letter of commentary from the fire department. I think I would like to see us start with the discussion of the fire department letter after the applicant has had a chance to explain this site and this project.
We have to open the public hearing.
Open the hearing.
Sorry, yep, I apologize for that. Thank you. Paul Grady, would you please, I'd like to have a motion to close the previous public hearing.
No, we just continued it. That's,
Or, excuse me, thank you.
Can't close it yet.
Correct, thank you. We'll continue the public hearing on the 24th of February, is that correct? All right, at 7:45 p.m. So now we will open the next public hearing. Paul Grady, would you please read the documentation?
Lauren's got a question for you, Amy.
Sorry, just a comment for clarification. I'm going to share the public hearing notice so that Paul may read it in a moment. But just for anybody in the public who may be watching, it was advertised at 630 Jerusalem Road because that was what we received on the application. And then after we received the application processed and distributed to the different boards, we heard from the fire department requesting a Windy Hill address. So that's why we're now referring to it solely as lot 32, but that's just a potential point of confusion. So just wanted to make a clarification there, and I'm going to share that now for Paul.
Notice public hearing, Cohasset Planning Board. Pursuant to MGL Chapter 40-A and 300-. Yeah.
Paul, I think you're going to need to, yeah.
Am I good?
wait. Why don't you turn off your video so we can hear you, then you can turn it back on after you've spoken.
Is this better? Notice of public hearing, Cohasset Planning Board. Pursuant to MGL Chapter 40-A and 300-54 and the Cohasset zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a virtual public hearing on the Zoom platform, webinar ID 851-1825-48, password 545480, on Wednesday, February 10th, 2021 at 6:45 p.m. for a large house plan review for property being shown on Cohasset Assessor's Map B109-49, 630 Jerusalem Road, Cohasset, Mass. 02025. The application is for the construction of a new RGFA 4,986 square foot single family residence. The application is submitted by Eames Capital Partners, LLC. A copy of the application plans and accompanying documents are on file in the town clerk's office at Cohasset Town Hall, 41 Highland Avenue, with office hours of Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Tuesday, 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Electronic copies of said application can be obtained by contacting Planning Director Lauren Lind via email at lllind@cohassetma.org. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the application should access the virtual meeting at the time designated. Signed, Amy Glassmeyer, Chair, Planning Board.
Thank you, Paul. Will the applicant please begin the next discussion?
Hi, John Teriyaki again. I will share my screen again to discuss the second lot. The upper lot is accessed from the existing shared driveway with an extension that goes up to a driveway area, a 3-car garage, a connection to the main portion of the house, and a back wing, and a potential pool in the backyard. Once again, the stormwater system, infiltration system located on the site. I will go into the architectural drawings to talk about the floor plans a little bit. The house is just under 5,000 square feet, 4,970. Here's the 3-car garage off of the driveway, the connection, the main entry of the house, the main living area, and a deck off of the back. The upper level is contained inside a roof and dormer, so it is really just a 2-story house. It's a gambrel style with the gambrel roofs and shed dormers making up the second floor envelope. So there is no attic in this case. These are drawings that were updated and submitted along with our narrative. So you may have the first iteration of our drawings which did not show the proposed topography accurately. So again, if you don't have this set, we're happy to resubmit this again as part of a complete package, but this does show the accurate topography. So the grade does slope down from the front of the building where the driveway is towards the back. So it does have a walkout basement potentially off of the back. Here is the front of the building facing the driveway, the main entrance and the gambrel roof second floor, the portion over the garage. And here's the view from the back of the building, showing the potential deck and the dropped grade off of the back. Just some additional views, the end view of the garage and the inside elevation showing the inside view of the sunroom and the deck off of the back. We do have a planting plan that we submitted as part of this project with the planting schedule showing a mixture of deciduous and coniferous trees, mainly along the two residential neighbors. There is some existing tree cover, and again, I don't know what kind of tree work has been done to date, but my understanding has been that those trees would not be disturbed unless they're in the way of the construction. And maybe Sean or Andrew can attest to that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it as a general summary.
Would anyone else of the team like to speak? The applicant team?
I'll add that we have had one meeting with the Conservation Commission for a stormwater permit, and it was continued until the 25th, which I would expect approval at that hearing. And we have a site visit with them on Friday.
All right, thank you for that. Would someone like to begin the discussion from the planning board?
What's the building coverage and the lot coverage, including
Yep,
the pool? Including the pool.
Yep, the building coverage is 12%, and the impervious coverage, including the pool, is 29%.
29.
29, yep. That includes the existing driveway, the proposed driveway, all of the roof areas, and the swimming pool.
That's right on the edge of the limit. What's the height?
The height of the building, again, from average grade to the peak is about 33.5. To the midpoint is about 31.5. And again, in the next iteration, I can graphically show where average grade is and put that dimension on these drawings as well.
Yeah, I would encourage you to talk to the building inspector, because we're in the middle of the process of changing, a policy at the moment, not a bylaw, but a policy of how we're measuring height. I don't think a single point of average grade is going to cut it.
How is it being changed, and how would you like us to show that height on these drawings?
How would I like you to show it? I'd like you to go around the perimeter at 12 different points and measure it, the average height with that. But I think the policy that's being developed is to use 4 points of measurement on the ground.
I believe the existing zoning bylaw essentially requires existing average grade around this footprint, not proposed, and the average of multiple corners. That's the current definition of how the average grade is supposed to be determined.
I'm just suggesting you talk to the building inspector.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Could I ask a question about the shared driveway? Is this shared driveway related to the driveway of the first house that was built on this piece of total property? I'm trying to put this shared driveway in context.
That's correct. It's number 10 Windy Hill, the existing house, and that will be a shared driveway.
The one to the left over here, it says Shannon.
So that means there'll be two shared driveways next to one another. Is that correct?
No. So lot 31, the project that we spoke about before, that has its own independent driveway. Now, this property, lot 32, will utilize the existing driveway, so there'll be one shared driveway.
Right. So, but the house next door that was pre-existing, it has also a shared driveway, which is unique to the two houses to the, I guess, west. Is that correct? So there'll be.
Sorry, Amy, if I may, I think you're referring to 14 Windy Hill, where are you referring to the new construction house that we just finished?
That's correct.
Yeah, we ended up with an independent driveway there, so there is no shared driveway.
Right, but you're saying that driveway that you did put in, that will be the driveway that's shared.
No, so that house isn't on here. So there's the two lots, 31 and 32, and then the existing older house that's up on the hill. And then further down Windy Hill would be the new house, which you can't see on any of these drawings.
Oh, okay, I see.
Were these two lots ever the subject of an A&R recently, anytime recently?
Tom, can you please speak up?
I'm sorry, were these two lots ever the subject of an A&R?
No, these two lots were created at the time when all the other lots on Windy Hill were.
Okay. Is this, I would suggest this lot wouldn't be legal and if it had been, but anyway.
I think your point is it's, what's required there is 35,000 square feet and they have 20,000 in their lot, but is this under a single lot exemption? Wasn't this under common ownership? Did it merge with the house lot ever?
No, not under the
Always been
single lot
independent
exemption.
lot with an independent tax bill, et cetera? Can you submit some verification that the lot, what the lot status was, whether it's filed under the single lot exemption, whether it had a separate tax bill and didn't merge with the adjacent?
Separate tax bill isn't the measure, Clark. It's just ownership.
Well, after a certain period of time, lots under common ownership, they merge. They don't, the property lines.
Yeah, no, I know that.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, but they don't merge here necessarily in Cohasset. That's what the single lot exemption's for. It says if it was a single lot of record prior to the zoning statute, that's whether the exemption allows it to stay in place.
Right. So some verification that that's what's being used under the zoning bylaw for these lots.
Yeah, I'm sure we can provide that.
That'd be great. And one comment or a couple of comments that I had was the two first floor, I think the architectural plans and the engineering plans, the first floor elevation isn't the same for both projects. But since we're looking at the second one of the two tonight, I just wanted to point out that the architectural, I think, says 44.7, and then the engineering says 44.2 for the finished floor. Something else. So I think if you're going to come back, it makes sense to coordinate that. My big comment is that this second house, the grade seems to be like the first floor elevations are 18 feet different, but they're only 60 feet apart. They're actually pretty close to each other. And this second house, definitely at 18 feet, that's almost 2 stories above, sort of looms over. And I think if you could make the case where the second house doesn't loom over by virtue of some creative terracing and really good vegetation plans, landscape plans. I think I'd like to see that. I think that seems to be the pool in the back of the house faces Jerusalem Road substantially, but there's an existing vegetated buffer there, so that doesn't seem to be much of an issue. But this second house does seem to loom over the first one, even though it's not quite as tall itself from grade up. But I'd like to just kick that around with the other board members. What do you think about 18 feet higher, but within about 60 feet of each other?
Would it be possible for the applicant to do a simple shadow study so that we could see what that might look like? I think that might be helpful.
Or a rendering.
Right.
A 3D rendering with both houses in it.
Right.
Especially from the Windy Hill intersection, but also from Jerusalem Road would be great. Right. Another one from across Straits Pond and Hull would be nice, but I think maybe that's asking too much.
I would also ask that maybe Jeff Hassett would like to speak to the vegetation and how that might be used as a buffer. It's kind of hard to tell how big the vegetation will be relative to the lot line of the second house.
Yeah, John, do you want to flip to the planting plan? Yeah. So in that area between the two houses, there are a number of plants, and these are plants that would intend to grow tall. They're red maples, red cedars, and pin oaks and white pines, and they are 3 to 4 inch caliper or 6 to 8 feet tall at time of planting. So the intent is to plant trees in that area that start off at kind of the larger size you can get from the nursery, and then will get larger over time, obviously.
You're saying that the trees in between are six feet tall?
For evergreens, we spec 6 to 8 feet tall as a minimum. That's what conservation usually requests. And then for the deciduous trees, they're measured by the caliper, and they would be 3 to 4 inch.
Right. So they are deciduous trees, and if they're supposed to be a buffer of some sort, does that really make sense over the course of the seasons to have a deciduous tree like that if what you're trying to do is to create a screen?
It is a combination. In addition to the maples, there's the cedars and the white pines.
And there's this landscape plan on both sides of the property line, right? We saw like a colored rendering version of the lot 31.
That's correct. Right.
This one's just circles. Yeah, this one's just circles on the plan without any rendering, or stands for what's evergreen and what's deciduous.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So I was speaking to the trees on the subject side of the property line, and then there's the additional one shown here.
The combination should make a persuasive argument for screening and buffering the deal with the slope and the closeness of the two structures.
Yeah,
possibly, right?
Exactly. That is the intent of it.
I think what we can do in the next round is to combine the planting plans so that you can see those together, which
Probably not
may
a
be a
bad
little more
idea.
helpful.
Yeah.
I think our telecom is getting a little bit unstable here.
Are there any other major issues relative to this? John, did you bring up the lighting for this one?
Not yet, but I can just speak to it briefly. Again, similar to the other house, we're primarily working with just wall-mounted sconce lights at all the entrances. They're scheduled on the drawings. I believe we have 2 exterior recessed lights and maybe 1 hanging fixture at this entry, and then 1 exterior recess in addition to the sconce at this covered entry. But other than that, the deck is also lit up by just sconce lighting, wall-mounted sconce lighting.
And the thing that makes a big difference for any light fixture is the lamping that's in it. Can you give us cut sheets and what lamping is being proposed for that for the next go around? Like
yes,
a 1,000 watt LED compared to whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, we provided some cut sheets, but we can't specify I don't think we specified the exact lamping, but we can in the next round.
What? Yeah. If you could say what lamp it is and like sort of the color quality, that might make a difference. I'd also like to bring up your elevation. What is it? It's elevation. Oh crap! It disappeared.
I have it on my screen here too, and these are the updated ones, which may be slightly different than what you have.
Yeah, elevation C. Elevation C. Oh yeah, thanks. There it is. That I noticed from the plan you've got a gas fireplace, and then you're indicating that this chimney is like a stone clad. It's not like necessarily masonry veneer, the whole thing, but it is got some kind of a stone on a frame for hiding a flue, for example. Is that what's going on? And maybe the answer doesn't matter yet, because this particular elevation is it's a particularly prominent elevation for this particular structure, and what I see, it looks like this 30 something foot high shaft. Is there anything that could be done in terms of giving a little bit more design flair? You're a good architect, John, and it seems like this element, the way it's represented, it looks a little well, not thought about. I mean, if you're doing veneer on a frame, then you could have a wider base and sort of taper up the top, and that would, I think, help it, as opposed to like a 3 foot wide shaft that's 30 feet high. It's a little rough. If you could look at that for the next time, that would be great.
Yeah, we certainly can. I totally understand.
I'm not trying to dictate style, but a little bit of finesse with this element, I think, would increase the value of the property.
Can I ask a question about the lights? Sconces, unless they're very well designed, can be seen a long distance, right? Because there's a glass globe and then there's an object that's attached to the structure. And given how prominent this structure is going to be, and given people that live on the other side of the pond, is there some kind of lighting that you could use other than sconces? Because it's really going to show. I happen to have the opposite view, and I can see different types of lights, those that have downward illumination rather than face forward illumination, and it makes an enormous difference in the aesthetics.
Well, dark sky fixtures is definitely preferred. But if the lamping is minimal and it's a warm lamp, then it could be fine. It's just a matter of, you're going to have a 200 watt bright white LED in there, or something that's warm, that's 40 watts. And but dark sky and can be an improvement.
We could also take a look at kind of like those barn light fixtures that are down lights that come off of an arm and don't project light directly as well.
Like gooseneck?
Gooseneck, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Got it.
Potentially on this facade this is the facade that faces Straits Pond, so.
Yeah, whatever it is, so it's not a bright beam, because there is a long distance that it can be seen.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that a bright beam is going to be a problem, but I do think that thinking of something where most of it is actually going down toward the ground really will make a big difference, because it's very obvious.
Okay.
Okay, so are there any documents within this particular project that were ones that were from a previous design? So I want to make sure that we get all the materials, all of the current type, so that the next view we see, we can follow one project in totality and then the next project in totality. So that will be very helpful for us.
I don't believe there was a previously approved plan here. I think this is going through stormwater based on entirely on the new plan.
Okay. Are there other comments of planning board members?
I've made my comments.
Amy, if I may, I raised my hand. Amy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can't see a hand, but go right ahead.
So, John, could I just ask, so the pool is at the same elevation as the walkout, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, just wanted to point that out to the board, that all that elevation essentially will end up being at 34 feet.
That's correct. That's the way it's been graded right now. That's at
Yeah.
elevation 34.
And the elevation at Jerusalem Road, is that 10 feet? I have a hard time seeing that elevation.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
This contour
so-
line is 10 feet.
I think it's also to keep in mind that this will be, at the elevation of 34 feet, it'll be 24 feet above Jerusalem Road, which is, I know we're talking about view corridors and like buildings standing in our face as we turn the corner, but I feel like this one's going to be, I think we'll still be looking at the side of the hill and its vegetation that's existing already, and that's unchanged. Just as I was looking at the plan, that just came to mind. That's all I had for comments.
Yeah, if I could add to that, the vegetation between Jerusalem Road and then the proposed work, for the most part, is going to remain. So in that area there.
All right. Lauren, could you determine whether or not there's any member of the public who would like to speak to this project, to these two projects? I mean, is this appropriate to ask now?
Certainly, there's been nothing input into the Q&A section. I do see there's a member of the public, it's one person in attendees right now. If you'd like to speak to the board, if you could input your name and address into the Q&A. You don't have to, and only if you want to. You can also leave comments in the Q&A. But other than that, I don't see any, and there's been no hand raised in the attendee section thus far.
Okay, Lauren, I do want to say that Paul Caleri was signaling with his hand, but I can't see it. Is that because you're seeing it?
I do see it.
Okay, because I don't see it in my viewscape. I just want to know why I don't know why. It doesn't matter, other than I couldn't see him and I didn't want him to think I wasn't paying attention. Yeah.
So we're going to continue this to
All right, so this
time and date certain?
That is correct.
You're looking for a
Would you like
suggestion?
to?
Yeah. Can you give us a time and date?
Sure, I would
Is there
suggest
something
if
we
we
have to
want to,
review?
sorry?
Paul Grady?
No, I thought someone from the public.
I didn't get any of that.
Yeah, somebody must be playing
You wanted to-
heavy games tonight.
Hey, we have a question from the member of the public.
That's what I was concerned about.
Thank you. Yes, we did. They did not specify their address, but Amy Bernicker, how much blasting of the ledge will there be?
So we estimated for this about 214 yards of material to be removed of ledge. There,
Jesus Christ.
on the upper end of the main box of the house, the grade does have to come down and there would be ledge in that area. And then, so that's where the ledge is being removed from. On the lower side of the main box, that's actually matching grade, or the grade's coming up a little bit for the basement, so there would not be ledge removal in that area. So it's a balance about minimizing ledge removal and also trying to keep the house low.
Jeff, can you estimate how many truckloads that's going to be?
Yeah, that's about 13 triaxles. If it were all to be removed, a lot of that material will be used on site as fill to build up the grade on the downhill side. So yeah, 13 trucks if it were all to be removed.
Does that satisfy the question from the public?
I'll note, while we await anything else, is that Amy did give us her address at 662 Jerusalem Road. Thank you.
How much is that in cubic yards? Because our current bylaw speaks in terms of cubic yards.
To 214 cubic yards.
Well, that violates section 11 of our bylaw, the one I want to replace, but which is never enforced, but says you can't.
Tom, are you speaking of an existing bylaw?
Yeah, section 11, the earth removal bylaw that we never use, never enforce, that I'm working very hard for 20 years to replace. Again, just for the record, for this hearing as opposed to the last one, I just think this is a complete affront to 300-5.4 C1 A and B. I think these houses are way out of scale, and these two lots are exhibits A and B in the argument to change our bylaws. And there's nothing we can do about it. Again,
So,
under
Tom,
this
how-
large home review, there's nothing we can do about it. But
Sure, we are allowed to either approve or approve with conditions.
okay, well then, when we close the hearing, you'll hear my conditions, which will be to make this house smaller and not blast as much and not take away the natural vegetation hasn't already been stripped clear of the lot.
I suppose then the other issue would be whether it's a majority, just a majority for large home review, or a super majority. It's just a regular.
I think it's just
majority.
I think it's a regular majority.
Yeah, we've operated as a regular majority.
3 out of 5 in order to approve the conditions.
This is
This law
more,
does not-
I'm making.
Wait a minute, we've got two
it's more
people
about the bylaw.
speaking.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, there's a second person who was speaking. Was that you,
Tom,
Eric Potter?
Yes.
Paul was trying to make a point.
Sorry,
Paul
okay,
Grady.
Paul Grady.
Tom, this law that's not enforced, how much is allowed to be removed? So maybe if it's enforced.
What does it say here?
I don't have the bylaws in front of me. That's why I'm asking you.
What's exempt is not more than 10 cubic yards. So I mean, you get to move 10 cubic yards in aggregate in any year, any 1 year from one premises.
Then why do we question it? Why aren't we following the bylaw?
Well, because under large home review, this isn't for us to enforce. It's for basically, Article 11 doesn't have any board enforcement. It's building inspector enforcement.
No, but it's for us to approve it.
Well,
Am I incorrect in that?
I don't,
Mark?
My recollection of that section of the zoning bylaw was it was an anti-quarrying
yes, it is.
bylaw, and
yeah.
that materials removed in order to accommodate a structure were exempt. But I could be wrong. I'm not looking at it. If you wanted to get into a real discussion, I'd have to have the bylaw in front of me. But
No,
let's
you
plan on doing that
are
for next time.
correct that you are correct that there's exemption for building a house, but I think 200 cubic yards of it is not necessary for the building of this house. But,
It's probably subjective
well,
issue, but
Yeah,
we
I-
can talk about it.
I mean, I do have the bylaw in front of me.
my comments are beyond this project. It's about problems in our bylaw that many of us are working on changing. I just want to point them out when they jump in front of us, and
That's
these
good.
lots
That's good,
jump-
Tom.
Okay.
I did just pull out the bylaw, and one of the exempt activities is the removal of material for the construction of a building.
Yeah, if you
Right.
consider 200 cubic some odd yards to be necessary for the construction of a building. You could build a different building that isn't 4,900 square feet.
Why don't we talk about this issue next
No,
time?
it's an academic argument because I can't, under the large home bylaw, I can't stop this. All I can do is vent about it. And I vented, I'm done, all right?
We have another question from the audience, I think. Lauren?
Thank you. Yes, Amy Berniker, again, from 662 Jerusalem Road, just stating her belief is the ledge should be preserved as much as possible, and she agrees with Tom.
All right, thank you. I wanted to ask Paul Colery, did I see you a little bit ago raising your hand?
No, I was just playing with my fingers on the side of my head.
Okay, I just don't want to, I feel bad. Okay,
Thank you.
Clark.
Thank
come
you.
on.
Amy, I'm sorry. I'm having bad.
all right,
Amy, I'm sorry.
so-
I'm
Say
having
it again,
bad
Paul.
internet tonight. I had a question for Clark.
Go ahead, please.
Probably answered it. So Clark, in our bounds to approve or disapprove, and what Ms. Berniker is saying, even if the law is not followed, am I incorrect? I'm just asking that. You probably answered, and I'm sorry, I'm having bad internet.
Well, we either approve or approve with conditions. And the condition, a condition could be preserve as much ledge as possible, or give up some of the finished basement in order to preserve some ledge, or there could be a target. I mean, it's possible we could say 200 cubic yards is ridiculous. 100 yards should be enough for you to build a house. That might require a redesign so that the house itself is higher than what it is now as a part of the plan. I'm not making any suggestions. I'm just sort of talking around the issue.
No, then thank you. You're filling me in nicely. I appreciate it.
All right, so are there any other comments of the board members? Can I get a motion then? Clark?
We need a time and date.
Thank you. The next possible time and date I would suggest would be February 24th at 8 p.m. The reason I say 8, I know that sometimes we tend to go over, but I'm always hesitant to put too much time in between the slots because we can't start a public hearing early.
I'll make a motion to continue the hearing to, was it February 24th at 8 p.m.?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Paul Grady, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Paul Caleri, aye, just in case you lost
Potter, aye.
Eric.
All right, thank you very much. All right, thank you all. Thank you, applicants. We look forward to new information and we will see you on the 24th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Clark Brewer?
Did I read in that article, if this is like not subjects not anticipated, that the legislature voted that a simple majority at town meeting is enough to change zoning instead of the 2/3 that we had before? So that's quite a big difference for our issue of reviewing zoning bylaws and expecting them to get passed on the floor of town meeting.
I'm not sure it's for every category of zoning bylaw. I haven't read it carefully, read the legislation carefully, but yes, they did it for things like housing. I mean, a lot of the changes were geared towards promoting multifamily housing. And we are going to have to change our bylaw since we have an MBTA station to accommodate multifamily housing as a right within 1 mile of the station.
I think it's a half a mile.
Yeah, sounds right.
And Clark, is
Well,
that
anyway,
something that you got an email today in regards to all of us? Or I don't think I saw that email.
I sent you the Globe article on that.
Yeah, the Globe, that Globe article covered it. If you
Oh, it did?
zoomed in, and if you zoomed in and read the article that was
Sorry, that was the only way I could get it. I got it in the morning in the
you
news.
just have to zoom in with your fingers.
Oh, okay. I thought I started to read it on the bostonglobe.com, but then I got kicked off because I don't subscribe. So
Yeah,
I should subscribe.
There's some interesting things there in terms of housing choice and the requirements to comply with housing choice, and what the governor is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I get a subscription from the Globe, so I will send the article around to everybody. There's also a little bit more that followed it afterwards, so I'll make sure everybody gets copies of it.
Thank you.
So at this point, I would like to ask the board, before we enter into a discussion, including the large home review, if we could do a quick tour of planning board member committee liaison updates. We haven't done it in a long time, and a lot of things have gone on, and I think it would be really valuable for us to know what each one is doing.
I'll go first. I'm on the Elm Street Corridor Redesign Committee. And we reviewed some preliminary designs that were done by landscape architect Mike Sardina the last time. I think that we're well, Lauren's on there. I think that we're talking about doing some community outreach and preliminary design as next steps for that, but it's going to be a slow moving project.
Can you be a little bit more specific about slow moving? Given that it's concatenated with, or it's very important for the harbor plan that we just approved?
Yeah, it's not gonna necessarily dovetail with the harbor project not in scheduling wise, but you never know, it might dovetail nicely. There's a bunch of things that are being done, some drainage, there's still the easements, there's water lines that are all going to be replaced, and then paving. And it's hard to say where it's all going to end up detail wise and layout wise. But I don't think it's not going to be a quick turnaround project, figured out quick.
Was there any discussion of our existing consultant with regard to a preliminary redesign? I thought there was some reason that Mike Sardina's needed to step aside as part of the design, and we were going to move to actually be using Weston and Sampson for a preliminary design. Is that incorrect?
Well, no, not exactly. I mean, Mike's done a lot of work for free, I think, for free. You know, he's got two basic designs, and what was talked about on the committee was, you know, that there isn't at this point a preference for one or the other. Both of them have different pros and cons to them, and that getting feedback from the public based on having two examples instead of one is there's more ability for people to kind of compare the two and want a third option that takes the best of both of them and eliminates the things that they don't like in each of them. And I think that's fine as an approach, you know, but you're baby stepping into it. And then building off of what Mike's done, I think that there was some design money for Weston and Sampson to do some layouts. Is that about right, Lauren?
Yeah, so I was going to add that we will be definitely using Mike Sardina's work as, you know, sort of feeding into this data collection that we've done, and that we reviewed a scope from Weston and Sampson to do this sort of public engagement with, you know, making sure that it's done correctly, particularly with the complications that we're now in virtual reality, and they'll be working to get us sort of to the 25% design concept. And I will note that you know, we received approval from the working group to move forward in this direction. And I was at the select board last night and I haven't had a chance to tell Clark yet, but we got approval for the funding. So,
What?
So I'll be reaching out tomorrow with more and about our next meeting. So happy to continue to put together a packet of information to give to the planning board, you know, kind of giving you more detail on this.
Great news. Great
That's all I'm doing.
Tom Callahan, would you like to report on open space?
Yeah, we met last night.
Can you remove your hand? Okay, please. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I'm bored. We are focused on doing an Earth Day townwide cleanup again. We've gotten approval for the protocols that are going to be put in place to do that. So that's going to be on April 24th, I believe. So we're gearing up for that. We've also been discussing the last couple of meetings, improving Wadley Park, which is the triangle at the end of the bottom of Forest Ave, Forest and Jerusalem at Black Rock Beach, and then across the little side street, there's more town property over on the other side of that side street. I guess the Cohasset 250 committee, for whatever reason, had taken on a possible redesign of that site. And we're undertaking to possibly pick that up with a completely different design, with the idea of having a small playground area for that end of town, since there isn't really anything up there. So something something on the scale of what we have over here in Beechwood, just a very small for young children. So that's pretty much the focus of what we're looking at there. The zoning working group you heard from last week, so I won't bother you with that one.
All
And
right,
then
thank you.
apparently I found out that I am the liaison to the Community Preservation Committee. And I guess there'll be meetings closer to town meeting, but I haven't been to any meetings yet. I just found this out the other day, so.
All right, thank you. Paul Caleri.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as Tom said, Katie did a nice job bringing everybody up to speed on the zoning bylaw working group there. I am also on a subcommittee from that group with Peter Pescatori and Jack Creighton, and we are looking at what has been considered this water corridor, which goes from Whitehead to Otis Street. And there is, are you guys familiar with that?
Waterfront zoning, the waterfront zoning study.
So yeah, I'm just to give you like an overall, there's like 170 or 155 properties that have like water views between that 1 mile radius stretch. We think we briefly talked about it last week, and Woody brought some slides and showed some. So we met and talked about that, and we're trying to figure out a way to simplify those zoning districts, because right now there's about 8 or 7 different zoning districts within that 1 mile radius that encompasses 155 properties. So we met and we're trying to get some feedback from council on how we could go about that, or how possibly we could create maybe like an overlay district or something. We originally started, Peter had proposed like a historical kind of a overlay district, but we know that probably different terminology might go over better with the residents in the town rather than historical. So that's one update from that committee. We finally had an opportunity to meet last week together, the 3 of us. So that's what we're working on in that subcommittee. And then I'm also on the Affordable Housing Steering Committee. And as most of you know, we put out an RFP for that Jerusalem Road property that's down the end by what I think they call West Corner. I want to say it's 808 Jerusalem, but it's the very last parcel on the left.
That's the right number.
So an RFP was put out, but I honestly don't, as of our last meeting, there was nobody that put in any bids to bid on it. So we don't have any new housing stock. We're in serious need for more housing, affordable housing. And as of right now, we haven't added any, I think, in 10 years. So that's the update I have on that.
Lauren Lind. Thanks, Paul. Nice presentations.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a little bit more of an update on the 808 Jerusalem Road RFP. We actually did eventually receive 1 bid from Habitat for Humanity for the site. In recent discussions, there's also been, the bid is now closed and we've only had 1. We're meeting tomorrow to review that bid and interview. We've also heard news of there's an adjacent property that was for sale. The trust was interested in looking and touring the property, but by the time that we were able to connect with the real estate agent, you know how things move so fast, it was already under agreement. That purchaser has now been in contact with the town and was sort of interested in the potential to combine the 2 lots and see what might happen there. Just unfortunately with the way that the bid was structured and the timeline is that, we couldn't extend it. It had already passed the deadline. So at this point, the RFP review committee needs to make a determination as to whether they'll award the bid to the one, person who submitted, or if we're going to go back and sort of go back to the drawing board and consider these 2 lots in tandem, because right now the RFP is solely for 808. So that's the latest, and that group will be meeting tomorrow evening.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Paul Grady.
Nothing to report.
All right. Will report then. I'm on the Economic Development Committee, and I want to first congratulate Lauren for launching a proposal today to the state for $100,000 for a really interesting project between Hull and Cohasset to utilize the card that was developed prior to Christmas for local retailers to be able for citizens to buy the card, essentially load it with money, then use it with Cohasset merchants. And what was interesting about it is really a couple of things. One is that it's a relationship between Hull and Cohasset, and it's a really interesting combination of people. The second thing is it's got a focus in addition to supporting elderly who may be withholding traveling and using merchant opportunities because their fear of healthcare, so that this has got a bit of a target around that. And Lauren, there's a third quality that was associated with the proposal. I can't remember what it is.
It was the three-legged stool, and it's escaping me now. But yes, it's an expansion of the gift program. It's focused on economic recovery from COVID. There's a the tie-in to the delivery system that allows, for example, people can use the business card and they can purchase something online and have it delivered to their home if they don't feel comfortable going out. So really, and the marketing component, that's what else it was. So we're also looking to do something like an online presence to have a business directory and give sort of the local businesses another means of marketing their businesses and getting, their things out to the larger public. So one of the examples that, kind of inspired us was See Plymouth, which is it's a program for Plymouth County, and it's a web-based, there's an app for it. And it's really, helps the local businesses get their, information out. So that was the other big piece that we're looking to do, is help the, the businesses market.
So what this reflects is a nascent idea that Chris Senior had and it hasn't been brought into this conversation, but it is obviously sort of underneath it all. And that is to have some kind of economic development strategy that is actually more of a regional strategy. So we're really small. It's hard for us to raise money. And it's also hard for us to actually leverage our own resources in terms of the historic context, our merchants, etc. So this is sort of like, if you think about it as a string of pearls, we've got one pearl and then one in the middle, and we've got two others, which would be potentially Situate and Hingham, that if we can't combined, it would be really an attractive idea in terms of amassing scale of demand, because we'd be up at about 50,000. We could be as much as 50,000 people if all those things were glued together. And that would make a big difference. There's a lot of demand potential there. So it's just a great start for economic development, and the committee is pumped. Okay, are there other committees or relationships that planning board members are a part of that somebody would like to talk about?
Phoebe's going to be 4 this weekend.
Is that the dog or the pony?
Daughter.
Okay, yes, I know. I do want to say that
No,
I'm
not going to get a puppy. No.
Oh, good. Have fun with that. Good luck finding one. I also just want to report as sort of a side note to the economic development proposal, et cetera, is that Emily Innes has been given some hours of her time have been provided to the economic development committee to write grants and to help us, get further coordinated. And I have a pending project with DoorDash, and I made a big pitch for them to actually extend service to Cohasset, because we don't have DoorDash. That means it's hard for people to get things from restaurants and other sorts of merchants. Okay, so if that's all that we have in terms of previous business, let me ask, is there any topic not reasonably anticipated? I know Clark sort of threw an in. Is there anything else people would like to discuss? Okay, can I ask, is there any update on Chief Justice Highway, where that's going and what's happening with the sewer?
I haven't received, I'm sorry.
Katie Dugan updated us a week or two ago on the master plan implementation committee. It's so complicated, and there's so many moving parts, but we're having another meeting the 22nd, I guess. So maybe we'll get more information, but if I was to summarize it, I mean, I don't see that there's a lot of progress being made of 3 or 4 towns gathering together to come up with an agreement. I think our sewer commission is taking a direction to do sort of go it alone and do what's needed for us and not worry about our neighboring towns. So if I'm not correct in that, some quick summation, somebody correct me, but it's just a lot of moving parts, it seems, but you know, like I said, not a lot with the 3 towns seemingly working together.
Okay, great. Lauren, is there anything else that related to Chief Justice?
No, I was just going to add, I don't have another update since the last time I updated you.
Okay, great. Great and not so great, right? We still don't have that problem resolved. That's a pretty significant issue to have outstanding. All right, so with no other topics not reasonably anticipated 8 hours in advance, we can move on to our discussion of large home review. And what we'd like to see here is, I think last time we got together, oh, just a minute, Jen Orm would like to say something.
Would it make sense to continue the A&Rs?
Yes, if that's what we need to do in order for them to come before us.
Right, Lauren, are we continuing that to the 24th as well?
We are continuing. I'm not, in terms of process, since it's not a public hearing, I don't know that exactly the language that would need to take place, but I did receive a statement from the applicant today asking for that continuance. And again, I just want to clarify, that was my fault. I told them that they would be on the 24th, and then I scheduled them for tonight. So I spoke with them today. They will be on the 24th, as I had originally told them. And again, I apologize for the confusion on that.
But I don't think we need to continue an A&R.
No, I'll just make note in the record that it's going to be moved to that date. That's all. I just want to.
We do need to be cognizant of them not obtaining constructive approval. There's like 21 days from filing. They need to provide us with an extension.
Right, and that's what I received today. I received a request for an extension. So I received that after I was not in town hall anymore, but I'm going to file that in the morning. So that'll be on the record for all. I'll file it for each one of those cases so that we have the extension there.
That's great. Lauren, is it possible, I know that you're just slammed in terms, both you and Jen, in terms of work, but the documentation for the A&Rs is so thin and some of the graphics are so difficult to read. There's a missing legend on at least 2 of them, so you're not actually sure what the lines mean. Can we get from people that are putting in A&R some sort of narrative so we have some idea about what's going on? I spent about an hour and a half trying to figure out each one of those, and I couldn't make hide nor hair of it. And I know Tom spent quite a bit of time, and I asked Clark to look at it. So if we can get a bit more info, that I think it would go faster.
Okay, I can certainly request a narrative from the applicant. I think that's a good point, and that's helpful. These things can be complicated to look at if you're not, used to deciphering. So I will certainly request that and get that to you for the 24th.
We should, it can be very simple. It can be very simple. Just what are you doing and why are you doing it is the biggest question. And
right, and it would be great if they had a legend on the maps so that you knew what the lines meant. I mean, there's one diagram that's got like 7 or 8 red lines going in different directions, and you have no clue what's actually happening there. So that would be really terrific. Okay, so we are now at 8:21. We had originally scheduled ourselves to be starting an open discussion about large home review. And let me say that where we ended last time was the idea that it seemed like there was an interest in trying to get something assembled to go on the warrant. And but there was a lot of back and forth, and it didn't seem like there was anything settled. I would like to make a recommendation, which is to consider the possibility of asking John, our new building inspector, to work with us to figure out a strategy for the large house review that works to achieve the objectives that we have and have had in the past, based on his experience working in numbers of other places. If we're going to try to put something on the warrant, we're going to have it very well specified. So I just would ask that we consider the possibility of involving him in a set of discussions to come up with a plan. You're muted, Clark.
That sounds like a great idea.
Okay. Other people like to comment?
I would go along with that.
Tom Callahan?
I think that's a great idea, but consistent with the email I sent to a wide group the other day, can I just poll this board? Do we first believe that houses over a certain size in town should either be prohibited or regulated? Yes or no?
Yes, depending on the area. I agree with Eric there, though, Tom, that you add teeth to it. But if it's, if it fits in with the area of town where it belongs, I don't know if you have to regulate the size in an area, but yes. But say in the hillside district, average home, I think is about 2,500 square feet. Then you have different areas. So you'd have to look at.
All right.
Do you see what I'm getting at? Eric brought it up nicely last week. That
There's a proportionality that's involved.
Thank you.
That's important.
Okay. As I said in that email, though, we identified the problem 15 years ago when it was passed, but I just want, I think it's good for a refresher of identifying what it is we're trying to accomplish here, because then that dictates what directions we have to go in terms of a bylaw. Because we're constrained by certain aspects of state law. We just got an adverse opinion about the proportionality proposal that I had put on the table. Not to say we can't use other methods of achieving that, but we're going to have to work at that. But if everybody agrees, so then I guess the question is, it's proportional to the area. That's fine. But I think tonight I was trying to make. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I always do. So these two houses are way out of scale for that neighborhood.
Hey, we have a public hearing. Don't bring up the other houses.
Well, all right. It's an example of what's wrong with the current bylaw, and it just is so frustrating to sit through this, and now it's going to be continued when there's nothing, absolutely nothing we can do about this.
It is true, Tom, and I know it.
And why bother with the exercise? I have other things better to do at night than to sit around with useless exercises.
Well, okay.
I thought you were going to say to sit around with you guys.
Okay,
well,
so
I love the company. I love the company.
So what I heard was two people that said it's a good idea to work with John, and we may need legal assistance. We happen to have legal assistance on the board to actually try to figure out what it is and how it is that we would move forward. And if everybody remembers, Tom laid out three possible situations. One was abandon the whole idea.
No.
One was in the extreme of some significant regulation. And the middle one was to figure out a mechanism that achieved the objectives and was legal. And I personally would like to aim for the middle one, that it is something that achieves our objectives and that it is legal. And given that John's got past experience in more than one town, but within our region, and I've spoken to him already about the request to have him help us sort this out. Would we like to make a plan where we either have an open working meeting where he comes and we're all together and we essentially talk about what the options are, and then try to get something that can be put down on paper and then discussed, and then the potential is that we try to put it on the warrant? That's basically a sort of very loosey-goosey proposal, which is, are we going to aim for the warrant? If we're going to aim for the warrant, we're going to need a working meeting so that we can figure out what it is that we want to do. And there is some homework that needs to be done in terms of looking at a few more cases of what people have done in different locations. But we would be aiming for trying to bring something to town meeting this spring.
Amy, Tom has the experience to put something together on
Okay,
that.
so I have three people that want to speak, and I'm going to do Paul Caleri, Paul Grady, and then Tom Callahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I raised my hand, but I know you can't see it. So now I'll lower my virtual hand. So you guys talk about proportional to an area, and there is no definition currently that defines proportional to the area. I think I understand what everyone is looking for. And I think a suggestion that I might make is maybe we could put numbers attached to that proportionality, like 15%, like it cannot, or 10%, like whatever it is that everyone's comfortable with, it cannot exceed 10% of the average 25 homes within its closest proximity. You understand? So we draw a radius that covers 25 homes around particular subject A, and we say it can't be any larger than 15%. Because I think right now, like I hear over and over again from being in my short time on the board and the struggle that the board has had, is that we can only make recommendations. But like if we had a large home review that said, here are the parameters that we can stay within, and the house can't be any larger than that. I think that might check a lot of people's boxes, you know, on this board, and it would serve the community well, I think.
All right, Paul, thank you. Paul Grady?
I think what Paul Caleri just said is incredibly smart. I think it's a great suggestion. And Tom, I'm leaning towards Tom as putting something like that together. What do you think, Tom? It's like 10% of anything in the surrounding areas if we come up with a figure. So that gives you the houses next door in the general area. I'm just asking. It seems to me like a pretty lot.
I'll tell you what my concern is, that, you know, and this is consistent with the opinion we just got about a totally new proportional zoning way of approaching things, was that Massachusetts law almost requires you to have districts. And then when you have these districts, you have to treat all lots similarly. And so the difficulty, see, you know, under our bylaw, we have a house size that can be as of right based on footprint, setbacks, lot coverage, blah, 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 blah. And you know, tonight we dealt with our 20% lot coverage, and it's yielding a very big house. And I will tell you that on the zoning working group, the thought has been to look at Duxbury, which only has a 15% lot coverage. You know, and then you can play around with setbacks. People brought up tonight that 20 feet didn't seem to be a very big setback. It's not. There's those things we can do, but when you want to then single out houses of a certain size that are otherwise allowed as of right, you have to be very careful about the prohibition against treating lots differently within a district. The other thing is that traditionally state law has told us we cannot regulate the square footage of a house, which is why all zoning bylaws go by a footprint measurement. And then you know, the footprint times 1 floor times 2 floors times maybe 2.5 floors, and then you get this house that has a bulk of X. However, that being said, our town council pointed this out the other day, that, you know, for us to look at the town of Rockport. And I recall being on the citizens group looking at that for the same reason. I just have to refresh my memory about it. But with these definitions like we use in this bylaw, residential gross floor area, or in other cases we use floor area ratio, the state might be loosening up on that and allowing us to craft a bylaw that can deal with the bulk of a house, which means dealing with the total square footage of a house. So it's very possible we could do that. And then, so those all would be designed towards deciding what's the largest we can do as of right. And if we get that number right, you don't have to necessarily have a large home review. Anything beyond that as of right number would be a variance review that the zoning board would do. And they won't give it. So there's a lot of things there to think about because of some constrictions by state law, but there are some creative things being done in other communities that we might look at.
Okay, so.
But in terms, the other thing, just like, I'll remind you about Wellesley, and right at the moment, our bylaw is identical to Wellesley's. And where we have a trigger of a review at 3,500 square feet in all three of our districts, Wellesley uses a different trigger in their three districts. So I think it's 3,500 in one, 4,000 in the next, and 4,500 square feet in the next.
You've been to Wellesley lately?
Yeah, again, it's.
I grew up there. It's a whole different
The
town now.
market is driving what we see tonight. People want these, humongous houses. I don't get it. I honest to God don't get it. My house is 2,200 and it was considered large and a very, very large house in 1970. And now that size has doubled or tripled and I don't get it. But
Okay, so I'd like to hold that one. I'd like to have Eric speak, and then I'd like to see if we can figure out, if we are going to do this, what the mechanism is. Are we going to have a work meeting where we talk with John, we come with information, we review beforehand, actions taken in different locations, and then we try to come to some agreement about what we think is the mechanism or mechanisms that we wish to use. So Eric?
So I guess, first of all, I think just to make sure everyone understands where I'm coming from, I'm not for mega mansions in town. And I think it does go to what Paul's saying, maybe what's changed in Wellesley and how it just changes the dynamic of a town. That being said, though, I think that in my tenure on the planning board, I haven't really seen many cases where citizens or neighbors have come forward and vehemently opposed the construction of a large home that's being proposed in an abutting lot. And my concern then goes to what's really the planning board's agenda here. Is it a personal agenda that some or all of us have to kind of control the design and build that people are going to have with regards to shingling and color and lighting and landscaping? Because so is it a design review that we're doing here, or is it a large home review? And I'm having trouble getting my head wrapped around it, because I don't know that I want any board to really be able to tell me how to design my house if it complies with zoning bylaws that with regards to setbacks and lot coverage and those sorts of things, especially when I look at the prior 5 years and see that the only people that have really had issues with proposed large homes are the 5 people on the planning board at the time. And many of the questions that are raised by the planning board members are really valid. But again, what's the intent here? And how do we, if we do rework it, which may be the best way to go how do you have a balance between this being a design review that's really, for all intents and purposes, subjective to the current board, and one that's going to be able to be fairly enforced, for the next board that comes in front of us? Because it's not fair to a private property owner, in my opinion, to have 5 or 6 people on the planning board making decisions on design of a person's house. It does make sense to restrict the size of a home, but I start, the more and more I see it, I think it's more of a zoning issue than it is necessarily a planning board issue. And because I don't know, again, and I always go back to it, what's our ability and legal rights to be able to really enforce these additional guidelines that our current bylaw has?
But isn't that what we're bringing up, trying to see what we can put on town meeting? I mean, I agree with a lot with what you said, Eric, but I also like what Paul said, and what Tom's saying. So, Tom, I mean, could it be proportional to lot size? You know, if I have an acre, I can build 10,000 square feet. If I have a quarter of acre, I'm limited to 2,200 square feet. If I bought 3/4 of an acre, am I limited to? I agree with Eric on another thing about telling people what they put up for lights and shingling and stuff like that. Those could be suggestions. But to limit a size to what you have comparable to your lot.
Well, that's what we were trying to do, and the proposal, and again, the proposal of the original idea for this was coming out of the discussions our citizens group had, and it was a zoning board member who brought it up. It wasn't our idea. I thought what I had proposed was eliminating our 3 residential districts and just regulating houses within a range of lot size. And there were 8 different ranges, you know, 0 to 15,000 feet, 15 to 30, something. It was like that. So we can't do it that way. So we have to still go within the districts, and districts are going to have a certain size limit, and over that they become, you know, they become non-conforming when they're outside of those limits. And you know, we're all working on the zoning working group. We're trying to find a way to do that, and I think we can do that. But I think what's going to be the end result is that we are going to have an as of right limit that is X, and that's all we're going to have. And then this other type of review that we're engaged in right now, in large part a design review of an otherwise as of right house, would not exist. I don't think this process is going to be the way to do this. It's going to be, we have to look at our as of right limits and change those to something appropriate, and somehow tie that to lot size so there's some proportionality.
I think
Your idea, I'm going to run that by somebody. I'm going to run that by and say, can we do something where if you are going to exceed, you know, the average house size within a certain radius by X%, can we make that a special permit process or something? I'll ask that question. I don't think we are going to be able to do it that way. The more I dig into this, I don't think we'll be able to do it that way. I think we're going to have to deal with setbacks, coverage, and pushing the envelope on something like either residential gross floor area or floor area ratio, and limit both the footprint and the bulk of the house by just straight dimensional regulations. If you're within them, fine. If you exceed them, you got to go for a variance. I think that's going to be the way it plays out in the end, but I will explore any and all opportunities or ideas that people have.
That's essentially what it is, though, isn't it? Right now,
well, right.
Without T.
You know, right now, the way it's written, it sort of mimics, I call it site plan review. It mimics commercial site plan review because we get into things about lighting and traffic. I focused tonight on scale and landscaping because those are the 2 things that were being destroyed here. I agree with Eric that we should not be regulating design. We do it in the commercial context, but we shouldn't be probably doing it in the residential context, and certainly never making that the sole basis of our decision. But, you know, like tonight, the bylaw says we're supposed to look at the scale of the buildings, and the building should be designed in scale with everything around it. Well, the developers are not doing that, and we just can't do anything about it because all Clark says is right. We can approve or approve a condition. So next meeting, if I vote, okay, my condition is the house only be 4,000 square feet, I don't even know, even if we all voted for it, we could enforce that because the way this thing is written.
It'd probably be appealed.
There's not even an appeal process in it. Yeah, there would be, they'd find some way to appeal it, but it's, But, you know, to
Okay,
answer
so-
Eric's
so-
question, what were we getting at 15 years ago and what is this? Yes, we are trying to limit the size of houses so that the housing stock in the community is somewhat more of a mix. I mean, it's probably a fiction to talk about this town being affordable, but you know, the state now has just changed the zoning law to encourage us to develop multifamily housing, which is totally different for Cohasset. But, you know, so we're being pushed in directions because of the prices of housing in this metro area to come up with other alternatives. And one of them is to not let mansions be built everywhere in town. So that is the main objective of this, not design. I agree we shouldn't be focused on design.
No, side.
Okay,
But
okay.
at the
so,
same time,
wait.
the state zoning law still constrains us in doing new and different things to regulate that size. That's what I'm trying to convey. We do
Okay,
have some of our hands
so
tied.
we've gone over this point before, and I think that this becomes a constraint, and we have to figure out how to work with the constraint if that's what we want. Thanks, Tom. Clark?
Yeah, just some quick perspective. As you all know, the bylaw was originally conceived as an anti-mansionization bylaw, but it quickly didn't become that. It became a sort of neighborhood outreach. This is what the house is going to look like that we're building. Invite your neighbors for cheese, kind of approach with the planning board. And the way I see it working now is it's a filter. I think it's working right now as a filter. It can catch zoning violations that are potential that people haven't thought through. It can catch that in its net, and it can also catch potential configuration mistakes that need to be mitigated. For example, these two new houses, not the ones that we looked at today, but if there were two new houses like that, the one was 20 feet above the other one, what would you do in between to make it so it's not like you're looking down into somebody's patio? Hey, we're out of ketchup. You got any ketchup? You know, I mean, so what mitigation techniques might be reasonable to make an abutter happy or not unhappy about the fact that the neighbor's building a bigger house than them? And so I think that those filter things, those are good at having the teeth to approve with conditions, I think is significant. We can't deny anything under large home review. But I still think that it works the way it's supposed to work. In terms of proportionality, we're still locked into 20% building coverage.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the lot size is or what zone it's in, you're locked into 20%. And probably for residence C, maybe that's too high. Maybe it's too low for residence A, but those aren't really issues of large home review. So my feeling is large home review does its job. Frankly, I think it's kind of a pain in the ass, but I like it to continue to work to be a filter to catch design mistakes or mitigate the impacts of a butter's goals. Just, you know, because you don't get to see what the house is going to look like until everything's shingled and you're like, oh, that's what it is. And I think that helps with neighbor relations. Okay, I'm done.
Okay,
Paul.
Paul Grady, and then I'm going to ask if we can recommend to ourselves a strategy to go forward, because we're now repeating ourselves, and so we'd like to stop doing that.
I
Paul
disagree with
Grady.
that, Amy, because I think we're talking, it's kind of a round table. I agree with what Clark said about having it be a filter, but where I go with Tom, and where I asked about Tom a long time ago, is I'd like to see some enforcement mechanism maybe applied to it, because we all have the poster child on Jerusalem that we've talked about that we're not talking about anymore. And another one that was allowed to be overbuilt. So there should be some sort of enforcement mechanism if it does slip through into the filter, as Clark puts it, which is a very apt way. But that's the teeth I was talking about, Tom. Is there any way of adding that if they overdo it, it stops? It just doesn't say, oops, sorry, we did it, we won't do it again. You know, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and they're back doing it again. That's all I'm saying. I don't think we should stop people from building what they want if it's within the parameters. But if they overdo it, there should be some way of stopping that. I know in upstate New York, they told the guy he had to tear down the back of his house, and they had to. That's what I'm getting at, is some sort of enforcement. Something triggers that, Clark. It slips through the filter. We catch it. It gets put up, just like the one that they put a stop build on, because you overdid it. No, we're not waiting a week. We're not letting you start again. You got slapped on the wrist, but the neighborhood's paying a price. And where Eric was saying earlier, we've heard a lot, even in my time on the planning board, which is not near as long as yours. But I've heard a lot of neighbor complaints about some of the large home reviews we sat through in person, more than we hear on Zoom. When people are in town hall, they're talking, I don't like it, or I like it. So we're working on a different environment right now, but that's the part I want to see, Tom, is more an enforcement trigger. Once it's through the filter. I like the way Clark put that. It is, but we also know things slip by zoning. It happens.
Okay, so we have some keywords here that we keep using. Filter, catch mistakes, proportional, some sense of neighborhood coherence or relation, lot size, setting, but it's not about like deterministic regulation. It is something more subtle than that. Okay, so what are some of the other keywords that we're using to try to describe what our objectives are?
An enforcement mechanism.
Yep, sorry about that. I missed that one.
What do people consider too big for a house?
Size considerations, okay.
It depends on who you ask, Tom.
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Right, that's right.
I mean, especially now after COVID, I think whatever that number used to be, it just got increased by 20%, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because of home offices and things like that, right? I mean, I think people are projecting that. Okay, so there are places that have been mentioned that we should be looking at that have practices that might relate to what we're interested in. Tom mentions Rockport. I think we should be looking at Brookline, because Brookline has a set of domains, and then they have proportional zoning within that context. So I feel like there are places that can provide us with information and examples, plus what happens afterward, right? The example is one thing, but what has happened afterwards? How contested have these examples been? But I think that we have to decide temporally that are we going to aim for the town meeting? Are we going to aim for the warrant, or are we going to actually do the investigation that we need? Paul's on his way looking at numbers. I think I'm interested in looking at the actual bylaws. Do we feel like we're going to be able to meet a date to go on the warrant? We need to decide that, because that would accelerate our actions, might limit what we're able to do, and also might limit the kind of information that we have to work with.
I don't know. I think we could make a valiant effort. If we have to punt before the final language of the warrant, then we could punt. I mean.
Okay, well, so okay, fine. I think that's a really good idea. Is we just aim for it, and if we hit it, that's great. Next step is, do we want to have a single meeting, not with a lot of business around it, where we sit down with John? We could also ask to have a facilitator of some type who happens to be an expert in this, if that's what we wanted to do, so that Tom didn't have to play both sides of the table, and try to work out what we want to accomplish and what are the mechanisms for that. If so, we need to schedule that.
I don't want to facilitate. What do you mean by facilitating?
Well, I mean,
what we had for the harbor, I hope we never see that again.
No, well, sometimes having somebody from the outside so everybody can equally participate is a good idea. And it is also sometimes really good when somebody's been to a million places and has been exposed to lots of different options.
I don't oppose getting outside opinions and looking at what other communities have done, but I also think anything this significant, a bylaw change has to be driven by the people in the community who live there.
I'm not arguing against us trying to do that. What I'm saying is that
whatever works. I can't research 351 bylaws. I know that. So.
Okay. So, Paul
Can we-
Grady?
Yeah, what if we're able to, I mean, prior to this meeting, no one's averse to meeting with the planner. What's his name? Richard Linnell? I forget his name. The new planner. But,
John Hallen.
thank you very much. But I think that as a board, we ought to come up with our own suggestions first. That we take into account Eric, Clark, Paul, Amy, Tom, and come up with something, then present it to them. What's the worst you're going to say? This is things you can't do, can do. I mean, every town is unique unto itself. Why aren't we coming up with a solution that's best for this town of 7,200 people?
Well, the challenge is that,
and then present it to the planner and say, this is what we want to go with, my friend.
and I think that's a sound advice. The issue is we need to collect the information and the examples. We have to, and there are 6 of us. The question is, how do we do that? Do we ask to have somebody who happens to be more of an expert in this domain or in this kind of activity, to ask Chris Senior to have them work with us so that we don't have to do the legwork to collect the information? Do we want to do that? Or do we want to actually be responsible for collecting the information ourselves?
I'd say, in speaking with Tom, listening to Clark, listening to Eric, listening to Paul, I think we could formulate, in my opinions as well, and Tom's a hell of a scribe, he knows his business, that we come up with something that we agree on, then we present it. Instead of, sitting down at some table, listening to the do's and the don'ts, why Brookline does what Brookline does, why Wellesley does what Wellesley does, why Framingham does what they do, what Hull does. We come up with something. Then so people look to Cohasset. Well, look at the way Cohasset does it. Either it works, it doesn't.
Yeah,
but going after each and every town, I mean, what makes Brookline better than Cohasset?
I'm not saying go out to every, this is why asking to have somebody work with us to have this occur makes sense. I can't go out to get more than 5 places, and I can't resolve 5 different cases in my own mind. But there are people who go around and help communities figure out what they want to achieve and then put it into language that can be placed on a warrant and then become a bylaw. Otherwise, we're going to do things like this, which is a list of words that we're all really interested in, but we don't know how they work together. And it seems to me that getting somebody to help us do this is going to be the fastest way to get the largest amount of information and the greatest focus. And then we decide, no, we don't like that. No, we don't like that. We like that. That's exactly the way we want it to say. This is how we want it to work.
Excuse me, Amy, but we have a bylaw in place. And if you wanted to make a modification of it, then it's tweaking, and how those mechanisms work in reality. Getting John's perspective probably makes sense. I don't think, if you want to get a real consultant on board to help us, which would be dynamite, but cost money, and we'll forget about Springtown meeting, I'd say.
Can I just add something?
Yes, Tom?
There's 2 different things where, I don't want to step on the toes of what the zoning working group is doing, because we're looking at the entire bylaw, getting rid of dead weight, changing definitions, and making substantive changes to the dimensional and use regulations. That is where towns like Brookline, Lexington, Wellesley, Rockport, that's where that kind of review is coming in. There's not many towns in the Commonwealth that have large home review, quote unquote, called as such. You can probably count them on one hand, maybe two. So there aren't a lot of examples. And it's different if we're going to make wholesale changes in dimensional regulations and measurements of using FAR or something else. That's a much bigger change, and there's already people working on that change, than tweaking what we have. And the tweak that we need is the ability to say no, because through the ability to say no comes enforcement. And it's a simple, it would be a relatively simple exercise for me to ask town council, well, if we did this and had this much more mirror our site plan review bylaw for commercial sites, or if we did that and made this a special permit process, could we do either one of them? And then, depending on that answer, we could do a tweak to large home review. But the bigger picture about how to change our table of area dimensional regulations is ongoing, underway, and we don't need to add to that at this point. If we can do a small tweak, can we get that done by Springtown meeting? Yes, but a major change to the dimensional regulations? No, we're not going to do that.
But that's
And the
not.
zoning, and the zoning working group isn't
anyway.
working on that timetable. We're working on a timetable that kind of major change is going to come in 2022, not 2021.
Okay, so Paul Grady and then Clark.
So, kind of piggybacking on Clark and Tom and Eric and Paul. So Tom, what would it take to add, say, to tweak, as Clark put it, the existing small home bylaw and add an enforcement mechanism to it? That's the power to say no. If it goes over what we have on paper right now, if you say zoning's working on doing some changes, let them do their work. With what we have now, what we have to work with to get on town meeting, what would it take to add some sort of an enforcement trigger? That if they do it, like say the poster child, as I like to call it, we could have had something behind that by, you know, and I'm being hypothetical. That roof has to come off because it has to come off, or that wing has to come off because it has to come off.
Yeah.
Could you add that kind of, and I'm going over the top. But
Well, I'm glancing at my copy of the bylaw here. For example, and I've always referred to this as a residential site plan review, but what we do not have that's in our site plan review bylaw for commercial properties, that bylaw 12.6 contemplates the ability to say no if the requirements that the applicant's supposed to submit aren't satisfactory. And it contemplates an appeal process to the court system and under a particular statute of the Mass General Laws. If we could adopt that to this residential context, that would be a quick and easy tweak and probably would be supportable. If we switch to a special permit, then I think it gets dicier because then we are taking an as of right use and treating it differently than other as of right uses. And So,
Yeah,
you know,
okay, so but Tom, with what you're saying, you're talking about the mechanism, but what is it that we actually would treat as the trigger? What is the trigger mechanism that would then allow put us in a position where we would want to do something?
I would suggest, and this was discussed in 2017 when the citizens group was bringing up changes to this particular bylaw. I would first suggest that we switch to the Wellesley system of having our regulatory trigger be at different square footages depending on the district we're in.
Square footage, wait a minute, square footage by what? And then,
well, right now, large home review is triggered by a 3,500 square foot building, no matter which district it's in. I think it should be different triggers in different districts.
in different districts?
Correct.
Okay, so you stop there for a minute, please. Clark.
No, I think Paul can make his point.
Well, I got Paul Caleri first. So Paul Caleri.
Thank you. I just did a quick research for everyone's information, and in the town of Cohasset, in the last 10 years, I looked at new construction that has sold. We have 18 units, and the average size of those houses is 4,400 square feet. In the last 10 years, we have 18 units as a sample size. Newly constructed, relatively speaking, within the last 10 years, average square footage of those houses is 4,400 square feet.
Big houses.
Right, and if you go back 10, if you actually go back 5 years and then do the 10-year increment, what you will see is this big jump in the size of the houses in Cohasset in the most immediate period. Right, and so
I can break it out any way you guys would like, but I
if you
just
do it
looked
as
at
a moving average, I think what you would see is that there's been this significant increase over time.
Yeah.
But we can know this, which is an important point to make. Okay, Paul Grady.
Amy, my point's kind of simple, and it's asking, and I think Tom is getting it. My thing is, can you add something that will trigger, say it's like a stop work order because they went over? They have the large home review. I'm not out to bust anyone's chops or anything like that, and I agree with Eric is passing it down. But I'm saying, is there a way of, so something gets triggered, it gets stopped, be it by the planner, by us, they went over. It's like if I did an addition on my home here and I was approved for 1,500 square feet, I added 2,000 square feet. Is there something, when that comes up for, that triggers a large home, obviously, or whatever, but is there, what I'm saying, I'm using the two words, enforcement mechanism.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That enforcement in that situation should be happening today, because whether you go through a large home review or not, you need a building permit at minimum. Nobody gets to build anything in this town without a building permit.
Yeah.
And the building permit is based on a certain set of plans, a certain proposal, and if you go over that, that should be something that the building inspector should be inspecting and getting out of his office once a week.
And John is actually catching those things right and left right now.
And then he should enforce that, because it would be a violation of the building permit you were given.
Right.
Now,
But I like here, what I'm getting back to Clark's word filter, Tom. I'm getting back to Clark's word, which is fantastic, filter. All right, it falls through. So again, let's go back to the other one, 580. Now, something happened there, but it was allowed to continue. It was stopped, but it's done. It's sorry, we won't do it again. Now, I know we have a new inspector and all that. Very best wishes.
Okay, so what are the conditions that what we would want to?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up, Paul.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Paul. What are the conditions that we would, at first cut, what are the conditions that we would set today in order to achieve proportionality that we think is important? What is it that we would say?
I think we would say exactly what we say in those two sections I cited, C1A and B, that the house be in scale with what's in its neighborhood, number one, and that its landscaping respect natural conditions before they go and wholesale. By the way, if the land alteration bylaw passes, a lot of what we saw tonight would have been addressed and would have been fixed. And that would have been a bylaw, and they would have needed a special permit to exceed it. And it would have been a lot more of a process they had to go through. But short of that, those first two things are, I think, the most important.
Okay, so
lighting,
let's talk about
lighting,
how we
I don't give a flying F about lighting. And
Can we
traffic
talk about the
circuit.
process of getting to a bylaw change?
Okay, wait a minute. I've got two people on the table here. Okay, I've got two people on the table here. I've got Clark and then I've got Eric.
So I think we just need to focus on the process. It doesn't matter if Tom cares about lighting or not. I think the best thing to do for moving forward would be for each planning board member to bring up their top 3 modifications that they think are important to this large home review. meet with John and have each planning board member say what's on their mind, and where we overlap, those are probably the areas to focus on, and see if we can pull it together for this town meeting. Or else, I think we could talk all night, and I'm not interested in that so much.
Okay, thanks, Clark. Eric?
I agree with what Clark just said. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that the bigger issue is the planning board, I think, is going down a road where we need to maybe start focusing more on planning board matters. And I think there's a lot of zoning bylaws here that we should start tackling as a planning board with this, the earth removal and setbacks and height definitions and, all those other things where I think our time, if we use our time properly that way, we actually achieve more than working with a bylaw here. That, in my opinion, is always going to have these, issues and holes in it that are going to be poked at. And we'd be in a good position if we actually did some town planning as members of the planning board and really work towards some of these zoning bylaw holes that exist. That being said, I'm going to actually do something I don't always do for the planning board. And I agree with Clark. Let's take a look at the existing bylaw, get it down on paper on what I think works and doesn't work in writing, and get it over to everybody so that, we can see where we overlap. I guess that's probably the best way to deal with it.
Okay, so I would like to see this as a recommendation, what Eric and Clark together said, which is that individuals make a list of the things that they feel are both within our domain and important for the objective of planning in Cohasset. And that those include such things as scale of the neighborhood, the basement issues, RGFA measurement issues, earth removal, setbacks. Everybody, we make a plan to meet with our own lists, and then we make a matrix. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap between all of us about what really matters. And then there's going to be things that are going to be individual issues. And I think we'll have to decide collectively which of them are possible and which of them are really a good idea. And then see if we can get to something that's smaller than 10 things. And then we would look at that as a basis for making. Eric is arguing not to necessarily hang with the existing bylaw, but that might be the mechanism that we think about using as the vehicle, because it's easier to change something than to potentially create something new. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just putting that out there. But could we agree that each person would make a list of the characteristics that matter to them, that they feel are important? And that we set a meeting where we get it together, we put it in a matrix, and we see how much of alignment there is. That's a first very important step.
Yeah, and just from someone who writes bylaws, yes, it's important to know what it is you want to regulate. So what is it about a large house that needs regulation or attention? Because it's large, there's something unique about it. And then the second part of that, not only in what you want to regulate, but when do you want to start regulating? And again, that's where I think we have to all think about the 3,500 square foot trigger, and is that the right trigger uniformly across the town?
Okay, so from the standpoint of process, then what we would be doing is, because what Tom has just said is what we regulate and how and when we regulate. So we have then list of things we think are important to be in some way controlled or managed. And then the question is when in the process something occurs. So could we agree to each individually make our lists, think of our triggers, and then come back together and see if we can match them up to something that's a workable number? And then at that point, talk to John Helen about how we might achieve this outcome. Can I get a sentiment from folks? Eric?
Couple weeks, so I don't drop the ball and let you guys down.
Can you say it again, please?
Can we just have a couple weeks to do it? Because
Yeah, sure. Lauren, what's our sort of drop dead date to get something on the warrant? I apologize to ask you like out of the blue.
That's okay. Thank you. I actually reached out to the town manager's office about the dates, and I'm looking for a concrete timeline. I believe we're targeting to have annual town meeting on May 24th, which would mean it would need to go to print at sometime in April. So we have we're coming into the tight timeline here. So just, you know, in terms of perspective and planning.
And we'd have to
Okay, so
hold-
we basically have a month and a half to act. And if we said, like Eric said, let's have a couple of weeks to do it. Let's say 2 weeks from now would be more or less the 22nd of February. And we'd have to figure out when it is we're going to do it, and not in a meeting, because it isn't, it's just not easy to have a conversation in a meeting. So let's find a date that we could get together. It can be a public meeting, but it's not going to be one where we do business besides just this task. And let's see if we can just get that first cut, right? The matrix of aligned issues and the triggers that go along with them. And then we can see if we can work out that into a system that would fit into either the existing bylaw, or we could be rather extraordinary and say we're going to throw the old one out and put the new one in. I actually think modifying what we have is going to be the faster way to go. But I'm not going to, that's just my personal opinion.
And I remind you on the timeline that any zoning bylaw change, the planning board has to conduct public hearings under chapter 48, section 5. So I don't know that the timeline is possible. You know, if we go to a fall town meeting, there's no reason we can't propose a zoning bylaw change in the fall.
Okay, so, but let's, how about if we just aim for a limited period of time for this gesture to occur, and then see what we feel about what we find out.
Okay.
Okay, so Lauren, do we have a way to stick a meeting in that is a work meeting for the planning board amongst all the various other things we have to do?
So first, before I answer that question, I just want to note, Amy, you made a comment about it, no matter what, even if you're not addressing topics that are applications, it needs to be a posted public meeting for the planning board to sort of convene together, no matter what. It's hard for me to answer the question on the spot. The next couple of weeks are incredibly busy, not only just for our schedule, but as we go into March, we're going to advisory committee and select board for all sorts of other things. And I also staff approximately 7 other committees. So I just can't give you an answer off the top of my head. Not saying that this is all hinging on me being there. We could always have another staff member there, but it's just really difficult to look in the next couple of weeks.
That's fine. So it's fine. We cannot know. We have to plan, and we have to deal with reality. So you take the time to figure out and then let us know. I totally understand that we have to do it in public. That is not a problem. I don't think that that's a problem for anybody that's on the board. But that's what we would aim for, is to have a meeting and we come with what matters to us and how we think it should be implemented. When does a trigger occur? Those are really 2 pretty distinct things we could work on. You're muted, Lauren.
I always catch other people. In the meantime, I will work to get you more concrete dates as to when the warrant is closing, so we can have a more concrete, realistic timeline as to the annual town meeting coming up.
Eric, have you been working out?
He's been out in the sun, that's for sure. He went skiing. You went skiing, didn't you, Eric?
I've been eating a lot, Paul. Yeah, that's just, so I'm just bulking up in the
Okay,
winter, you know?
listen, it is
Like a bear.
9:15 and we've done a great job in the hour and 15 minutes that we've spent.
I
Clark?
miss you guys. I miss you guys.
I could make a motion to adjourn.
Do you want to qualify that in some way, like codify what we've agreed to do and then say, I want to make a motion to adjourn?
No.
No?
You just want to adjourn?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I hear a second to this motion?
Second.
Okay, I've got a second. Can I get a roll call, please?
Clark Brewer says aye.
Ron Callahan, aye.
Paul Grady says aye.
Eric Potter, aye.
Paul Caleri, aye.
Amy Glassmeyer, aye.
Thanks. Hey, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Don't forget, buy candy, flowers, and a card. It'll pay off.
Keep it local. Buy them locally.
Yeah, really, use the cards that we just created.
Great job, by
Right.
the way, Lauren.
Okay, we'll move this along. This was a
Thank
good discussion.
Thank
This is a
you.
good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good
Oh
night.
my God.